Modern English essays of 20th century. During the 20th century, there has been a revival of the periodical essay and the personal essay, which had been cultivated earlier by the 18th and 19th century essayists. We shall deal with the prominent essays writers of the century in some detail. First of all, we will talk about G.K. Chesterton, who was born in 1874 and died in 1936. G.K. Chesterton was a critic, a novelist, and a poet of rank, but he was also an essayist of repute. Richard Church called him the greatest essayist of his time. It was in the Daily News that Chesterton made his earliest reputation. He used to write in its columns upon all manner of books and upon nearly every subject under the sun. He used to sit and write his articles and essays in a Fleet Street cafe. There he would sit, talking, gurgling, with a sort of internal combustion of humor, emitting little groans of sheer pleasure as he scattered the flowers of his fancy. It was characteristic of Chesterton that he should be assumed by what he wrote and by what he said in public. Chesterton was a serious writer and he had no faith in art for art's sake. He was a satirist and spent his life in vigorously attacking the conclusion arrived at by intellectuals. There was an engaging pugnacity even in his lighter essays. He subjected the shams and hypocrisies of the modern age to the hammer blows of his epigrams and witty sayings. According to Moody and Lovett, Chesterton caught the infection of satire and epigrams during the 90s, but he used these weapons, not like most of his contemporaries, for destructive criticism, but for the defense of constructive principles, old faiths, and venerable institutions, especially the Catholic Church, and for laughing down the sleeping pretensions of science and modern thought. Chesterton's chief weapons are wit and paradox, and these are employed with dexterity in his essays. Wit is now denotes a kind of verbal expressions which is brief, deft, and intentionally contrived to produce a shock of comic surprise. Its typical form is that of epigram. The surprise is usually the result of an unforeseen connection between words or concepts, which frustrates the listener's expectations, but only to satisfy it in a different way. Another is paradox, which is a statement which seems on its face to be self contradictory or absurd, yet turns out to make good sense. Compton and Rickett comments: Chesterton's strength as a writer does not lie in the profundity of his thoughts or in the presentation of any original point of view, but in the clear and witty way in which he expresses commonplace truth. If we talk about his prose style, Chesterton had a great skill in dialectical writing. Next, he possessed the gift of writing with simplicity, beauty, and clarity. Next, antithesis was his governing passion, and he had a genius for paradox. Chesterton reveals in antithesis distinctions, identities, and absurdities. He argues usually by analogies and examples, though there is likely to be a real idea behind his display of fireworks. He has a gift for illustration worthy of great poet. The world is constantly alive for him, and images occur to him naturally from the farthest end of it. He knows the habits of men and women as a reporter knows them. He is positive, dogmatic, and sudden in his statements and seems to find a great deal of fun in speaking extravagantly to an age which has been trained to accept only qualified judgments, to be skeptical about everything. Other essayists of 20th century are Hilaire Belloc, E.V. Lucas, Robert Lind, A.G. Gardiner, G.B. Priestley, and Aldous Huxley. Thank you all.